We're going to be talking today about getting started with your online store. And today we have with us a whole bunch of people. We are going through a webinar series, going through the standard logic of how to improve your business, especially moving online. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but there are events running every week. This is just the webinar series I'm showing you here. We're going to be running all sorts of different events. In the room today, we have, actually, there's a fifth person here, Jamie, whose camera isn't on, so you don't need a picture of him anyway. He's invisible. But we have Troy, Lindsay, Taylor, and myself. And the cool part today is there's enough people here to answer all of your questions. So if you have questions about e-commerce, you have questions about business, you have questions about marketing, you can ask them in the chat. You can ask people directly. And we will answer your questions and are available. Just, if you get bored of anything that I'm saying, feel free to ask somebody a question directly or ask them the question and answer. And we have some people here who will answer those questions on the go. Today, we want to talk about selling online. Beginner's Guide to Getting Started with Your Online Store. Now, just at the very beginning, I want to talk about theory. Why e-commerce? Why would e-commerce be important? Obviously, everybody out there, you either starting a business, because this is about starting a business online, and if you're thinking right now of starting a retail store, you're probably got the timing off just slightly. One is because retail stores, unfortunately, are closing like crazy because of, obviously, COVID and other things. But before that happened, there was already a pretty meaningful shift towards online retail. You can see, if you look at the stats, that electronic shopping, we buy more and more and more and more things online. We were over the last 2 decades. And in fact, the total share of e-commerce versus retail had grown from 5 years ago about 7% to earlier this year, we were at about 15%. And there's obviously, that's because of core advantages. It's easier to sit down in front of a computer and buy something than drive somewhere in some cases. You can get access to customers that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. You may not know about a retail store, but you can access them. It's cheaper to run an online store in some cases than it is to run a retail store. There's expenses that you don't have to worry about. And of course, everyone that logs into the website, you can give a personal experience. So everybody has a unique experience every time they get there. And of course, what's changed is that COVID came along. And in the last 3 months, obviously, lots and lots of retail stores are trying, Treefrog has been hearing these, working with many companies who are trying to suddenly get online immediately. We have a client we're working with this week who we built a website for 2 years ago. When he first built the website, they were doing, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000 a month in sales. But their core retail store was still so much larger that they weren't really paying attention to what they were doing online. The first month of COVID, they did $500,000 in sales, and last month, or this month, they're already at 1.2 million with 1 day left. So that's a huge growth, obviously. And now their biggest problem is not online sales. They're not worried about that at all. They don't want us to really help them there. Their issue is hiring people to get stuff in stuff boxes. So, it's interesting how your business changes as you go. But there's been a huge shift. Some things are now bought online, other things aren't. There's been a huge, everything's kind of in chaos. But there are companies, and many of the companies we're working with, that are having record by record online sales every single month. And a lot of their sales are just moving online from where it used to be in person. And some of those, for example, I was telling you about is actually a forestry company, and they sell sort of things to landscapers and things like that. So if you were buying landscaping stuff from your local retail store, you're not anymore. You're buying it online, because why go into a store and risk getting COVID? It's going to be stuck around for a little bit. I also want to tell you, and this is a story. We talked with my son a couple of times today. The guy woke up this morning to bug. And a year ago, this is last year, he was sitting out in front of the local pub selling iced tea. And he was making $82 an hour selling iced tea. Basically, I think people thought he was a homeless child. And he was like selling things to people. They wouldn't even take the iced tea. They were just giving him money and saying, "Oh my goodness, you poor child." Anyway, he is a hardcore entrepreneur. And when COVID happened, he went, I'm going to go try and figure out how to become actually before COVID happened. He wanted to figure out how to make more money than $80 an hour because he realized sitting in the hot sun and he wears black would be a terrible thing to do. So what he did is he went online, he found all these videos of how to become a millionaire as at that time an 11-year-old, and all these different videos pointed him to the fact of becoming an online reseller for Amazon. And the trick here was, what you'd do is you'd go to Amazon and you'd use some statistical things. There's one called Jungle Scout, and it will go tell you what products on Amazon sell lots of, but aren't prime. So they aren't automatically shipped quickly to you, but there lots of them still sell. You grab those things that have low reviews or high reviews, and you sort of figure out some mathematical stuff. There's lots of YouTubes out there on this. And then you buy those products from Alibaba and you ship them directly to Amazon, and you leave them in Amazon's warehouses, and then you sell them. So I, of course, had my son trying to use my credit card to buy stuff off of Alibaba to send to Amazon so he could become basically a micro distributor. This is fascinating. This is the danger of Amazon. It's not Amazon itself. It's the micro distributors that can buy products from China and other areas and sell them easier and faster than you can through your own online store. So this is why this is an interesting concept. Why is Amazon out in front of everybody? How are they doing that? And the reason is they've closed the gap. You can buy something from Amazon today, and there is a strong likelihood that it will arrive tomorrow. Even stronger, probably likely that you can get it by the end of this week. Now that's nutty because most people's businesses, so you go to buy something from them, and a week later they print off the order and then they stick it in a pile, and then eventually it comes back. So you buy from the average online retailer, everybody knows this, you can expect to get something in 2 to 3 weeks. You buy from Amazon and you'll get something in the next day or so. That is a huge, explosive idea. That idea that people need to close the gap, and this is for another presentation, we're talking about ERP implementation, et cetera. I think it's next week. Is that right, Taylor? Next week is ERPs. So
next week is digital marketing.
Next week is digital marketing. Okay, and the week after that is ERPs. Okay, so we're talking more about this concept about closing that gap. And it's not really about starting your businesses, but if you've got a larger business. Now, but when you're starting your business or at the beginning of the idea of digital marketing, there's two big theories that you need to keep in your head, and you're kind of balancing these at all times. The first theory is what we call hub and spoke, which is there is a store that you're trying to sell on. This is your online store, and everything you do about marketing is trying to get people to that store because the ultimate goal is to sell on that store. And that is it. Obviously, that's a great start. That's a great start with marketing. That's what we're going to talk about today largely, is how do we get that store started and how do we get people going back to that. So if you attend next week's webinar, we'll talk about how you could use digital marketing to get people to that store. Now, the other side to this, though, is this omni-channel idea. And the omni-channel idea is selling on your store isn't necessarily the goal. Selling your product is the goal. So it depends on where you're coming from as a startup or as a business. Do you just want to sell product? Or do you want to sell stuff on this store? So those are two different models. If all you want to do is sell product, you don't even necessarily need an online store. Maybe you could sell through Amazon, maybe you could sell through Etsy. There's all sorts of other options, and we're going to talk about those today. But that's that omni-channel hypothesis versus hub and spoke. Hub and spoke is let's get somebody to our thing. Omni-channel is let's just do the job of getting people there. At the end of the day, though, when it comes to selling things online, it comes down to a very simple concept. And once you understand this philosophy, everything else starts to come into focus. The philosophy is simple. People want to buy things from people they know, like, and trust. So if you think about all the pieces and all the marketing stuff and everything that we do, all we're doing is trying to get people to understand, A, that you know we exist, that you know us a little better, that you like and you want to work with us, and then that you trust that we can do the job. And the trust comes down to, do we trust the product? Do we like the product? Do we like the company that's selling the product? And there are companies like, I would say, The Body Shop, who, you know, even the product itself isn't necessarily better, no, I'm sorry to say this, than any other place, but you love and trust the idea of the company. And they become, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in sales as a result of that. And the idea is simple, is that when somebody first finds your product or finds your service, it starts off with trying to prove at the beginning that you exist, that the product is there, that, you know, somebody wants to buy it. And then you gradually move them through an emotional connection. by increasing credibility and increasing trust with those people. So eventually they start engaging with you and they form an opinion about you. Then they bought from you before, or they've seen your brand around, they've seen that you have it, so they start considering that you're the right place to buy from. Then they trust you, and then it becomes their preference to buy from you, and then eventually they have loyalty. The ideal, and this is a key issue, so how do you deal with, for example, returns? So this is a classic example. We're all happy to sell stuff, but then we treat people like crap after they bought our product. And of course that comes out because the world, digital marketing, everyone's voice is heard these days. And then nobody wants to buy from you again. The trick isn't to get somebody to buy from you once in most cases. The trick is to get people to buy from you multiple times. There are some things that only sell once, like a transmission. You only probably replace your transmission once every decade or two. But if there are things like buying watches, buying stuff, you want to create a relationship where you keep people coming back over and over and over again, whether it's once a day, once a week, once a year, whatever that is. You want that experience. And if your credibility is strong enough with a person, with that person who's buying from you, then they will be more likely to actually come back, remember you, and want to come back in the future. And if you were to disappear as a brand, they would actually feel a sense of emotional loss. Now, once you got that emotional loss thing, this is important, the marketing funnel, we've got that sort of awareness, engagement, consideration, we've got somebody to buy something, now they adopt, now we want to expand. Now the ideal is not just that they buy from us, but they actually tell other people about us. That's an even bigger win. If somebody's going to advocate for our brand or for our product or for our website, whatever that is, we've got them nailed. So the experience that they have throughout that process, how they feel about the brand, how they feel about the end product, at the end, we want them to go online and say, ooh, I just bought this, or I got this from this website. That is the ultimate occurrence. That is the perfect digital marketing, where you're not only creating awareness, but the awareness creates advocacy, and the advocacy creates awareness all by itself. This is interesting because this is the same way all core sales happen. Core sales happen like this. Starts off, and I know somebody is there, somebody's buying something, somebody's coming to the website, etc. Once they see us, once we know that once somebody's been to a website, then they become somebody who's looking around for more information about the product or service or whatever that is. Then eventually they just want to buy once. That's a customer. Somebody who buys something from you once is a customer. Ideally, you get them to buy from you multiple times. That's when they become a client. And then now they're willing to actually pay a little bit more because they trust you, they knew that you shipped it, they knew that they had a good experience, etc. Then eventually you want to push them up a little bit more, and you want them to advocate for you. You want them to actually go online and say nice things. They want to tell their friends, etc., about the experience that they've had. This is not about just getting an e-commerce store technically up and running. It's about the entire experience of what happened as they bought the product, as they dealt with you, and afterwards. And then if they buy and they've recommended you to a bunch of other people, then they have that emotional experience. They're your partner, whether they bought from you. So the fact is, if Amazon suddenly died today, everybody in this room I know would be like, oh my goodness. I mean, obviously they're not about to die, but the idea that we're like, okay, well, how will we order that? You'll have this sense of loss where, oh my goodness, I used to buy this from this company. Now I don't know what I'm going to do. Anyway, that big idea, that's the big philosophy that I think is most important, is we're trying to get people from not just knowing that we exist, but all the way through this relationship where we have a positive relationship with them, they've had a positive experience, and then get them to tell people about us and then eventually buy from us some more. Now, when it comes to website building, obviously there's all sorts of different types. We're talking about e-commerce today, but I want to say there's e-commerce stuff, and there's different goals in e-commerce than if you're selling services, than if you're selling, you have a whole distribution network, etc. We have lots of experience with all of these things. But today we're going to talk about how do we get people back to that core idea, that how do we get people to buy online from you? What does that store look like? And in fact, the first thing is, of course, having an anchor. And that anchor is usually a strong website that sells stuff on your actual website. And if you're going to get started, there are less expensive ways if you have a single product to get online. But if you're building a product, you want to, what platform, etc. We're going to talk about that in a second. You got to know about all these pieces, about how all the pieces are going to fit together to move forward. So here's the core things you got to know depending on how you approach and what platform you use, which I'll get to in a bit. The first is you've got to think about architecture. So what architecture is how people are going to traverse your website. So I talked about how to increase or improve relationships with people. And this is the thing is every different person reacts to different stimuli. Every person has a different experience in their life, a different story. Everybody gets their story, whether it's a good one or not. And the question is how do you communicate to those people? And what would be great is if there was a giant lever and you pull that lever and all sorts of people come through that lever because they love it. But that's not actually how it works. What happens is there's all sorts of levers in marketing. We'll probably talk about this next week. And you're running around trying to pull all these little levers, trying to get people to come in and trying to build trust, build credibility through all these activities. So all these little activities, all little levers are pulling in the right order, and eventually people get to you. But you can do that and expend an infinite amount of energy and not get anywhere. You can just run for running's sake. What you've got to do is figure out who are the people, what are the things, what are the highest and best activities that you can do to get people towards this result. That's the goal. So what you do is you start by trying to group the people that you know you might buy from you into like mentally logistical groups. How are those people going to be grouped together and make sense? And we call those the personas. That's sort of the industry term for it. What are the personas of people that are going to buy for you? What types of people are going to buy from you? Don't start thinking about the technologies you're going to use. Start thinking about who are the people that are going to buy the product that you have. Once you figure out who those people are, you got to really think about what that person looks like. Are they coming to you through social? Would they have questions or specific issues they need help with? What questions keep coming up? What are their fears? What are their problems? What are they worried about? What keeps them up at night? What's their budget, etc. Once you've figured out what that is about your group, you can actually spell this out. I mean, Treefrog does this professionally. We'll help you build these personas for you. But there's lots of tools out there that you could go and do a persona development. So you go through and you figure out what are the key emotional triggers that are going to make them, how much money do they have to spend, is it this amount of money, that amount of money. Once you've figured out what those people are, that's going to drive everything. That's going to drive what the journey, what the map, what's going to happen. They're going to go out online. They're going to see this. They're going to see that. They're going to have these three inputs. Those three inputs make sense. I like this thing. And eventually I'm going to end up back to your website. So you could build a website. If you haven't done all of this thought process, your website's not going to do anything. You're not going to go anywhere because you've got to have thought about all that stuff before you even get your feet wet. So let's say I have a product, I want to sell it, and my first thought is, hey, how can I get this online? That's not your first thought. That shouldn't be. Your first thought should be, who are the people that are going to come buy this product? And what is the experience and what is the map? What is the journey that they're going to have in order to get through to this experience? Now, once that happens, you've got to realize not everybody's going to come in the front door. Some people are going to come in through side doors. I search on Google for this, I find this side door. And in fact, over half of web views come in through side doors. So most people think, and their entire mental experience as they think through the experience of their website is always about what does the homepage look like? Half of the people don't even go there. How many times have you been to a website and you don't even once go to the front page at all? I mean, eventually you might end up back there in sort of your experience, but usually you go to a page, you find the product, you click buy, and you keep going. And there's especially product-based websites. You're there, once you find the product, you're doing some comparisons, and then you want to trust the company and want to keep moving. So you've got to think through this architecture of what is experience going to look like as people land on the inside of your page. And what's interesting is there's lots of stats out there. If you're starting a website from scratch, this is all going to be about common sense and maybe some professional help like from Treefrog. If you're starting and you're looking and you've had lots of people come to your website, then it's a question of looking at the stats and letting them drive you. If all of your people have to go through these 3 clicks before they can get through to where they want to go, you got your website wrong. You got to start thinking differently. And that's where Google will give you some input, and you can actually look at eye tracking, you can do heat mapping. There's all sorts of cool statistical ways to go, oh, this is how people are currently using our website. Therefore, when we refresh our website, we should build it more like this because our sales will be higher. We just identified the client I was talking about before. We identified that they do 1.2 million in sales. Over half their traffic is through mobile, and almost none of their sales are through mobile. There's a huge opportunity there. You go look at their website on mobile and you realize Right, nobody can buy through this way. We got to fix that. I will fix that. We'll probably double their sales in the next 2 months. So think about this now. You build this architecture, you figure out how, and this can be as simple as sketching. Again, professionally, we do this, obviously. The next step, once you figured out how people are going to traverse your website, is how are you going to create emotional connection? And this is all about branding. So when you start branding, you're like, oh, I need a logo. I'll just go buy a logo, from 99 Designs. That's easy. That's a good start. But that is not brand. Brand is, and we gave a presentation on brand last week. If you attended it, thank you. If you want to see it, poke Taylor and she'll send you a link to the brand webinar from last week. Yeah, and the idea is that you need to create a strong emotional connection with people. And the way you do that is not a logo. This is not about having a great logo. Yes, a logo, sort of the iceberg, the little part of the iceberg that you can see is about brand. But people don't emotionally connect with a logo. People emotionally connect with the experience that they've had with you. So you've got to figure out, all the things. The business name, we call these artifacts or brand artifacts, all the little stuff all around you, which is everything from the way people, or the experience people have when they walk through your front door or the front page of your website to the color of your hair. That may just be in my case. Needless to say, all this stuff and all this emotional connection stuff, it's all about trust. It's all about helping or increasing trust, increasing credibility. So every time they have an experience, they are more likely to come back to you. And this is actually about reduction of risk. So if I know the last time I bought something through that company, there's a huge personal effort that I had to put into it because I got the wrong product, it came badly, it came 2 weeks late, I lost my opportunity. I will never buy from them again. I have to say, I've had 2 or 3 really bad Amazon experiences in the last 2 months, and this is how much loyalty I have, and my loyalty towards Amazon has dropped to nothing. I'm like, if I could buy it elsewhere, I totally would right now. I will. Even if I have to wait a few more days, the likelihood that it doesn't make it to me is high. The fact is, I want to trust that then in that experience that I'm going to get it, that the product's going to be great, that if I have problems with it, I'm going to be saved. It's interesting. I'm going to totally go down a rabbit hole here, but the idea of a review in our heads is sort of the static thing where I'm going to go and I'm going to get a 5 out of 5 review, or I'm going to get a 1 out of 5 review. That is not how human beings work. And in fact, if I give certain reviews, like a Google review, I can actually go change that. So if you really watch carefully, you can actually get somebody to increase or change their review from a 1 to a 5 or a 5 to a 1, depending on the experience. So I love this. So you buy your product and you've got 5 out of 5 because you're super excited. You get the product and it doesn't work. You're now at a 1 out of 5. And then you want to send the product back and they send you a box and they help you all through that and you're a 5 out of 5. And then you get the next product and there's this entire experience that you're going through, and that's like wrenching your emotions and making you happy or sad. And if you happen to be lucky and have one experience where you bought it once, the likelihood is very low that you're going to have a super positive experience. If actually the product comes in and it's terrible, and then the experience of getting it back and dealing with the whole process is good, you're more likely to buy from that company again than if you just bought it once and it worked right the first time. Interesting. That's increasing of trust. And this is how brand works. So in the branding webinar we gave last week, we were talking about Dasani water and how it's actually more expensive than gasoline, even though it's tap water. Literally tap water. Like they take it out of the tap and put it in a fancy bottle and sell it. And I still have my bottle here from last week. And fascinating enough, but I am emotionally connected to Dasani water, even though I pay a fortune for it. Well, that was last week's water. Never mind. So, and again, there's a process for going through this whole thing where we figure out what that brand is. You can go do this, but you're trying to create all these artifacts that create emotional connection. And we talked last week, and this is a really cool point, that a Coke bottle, if you see a little tiny piece of the Coke bottle, it reminds you of Coke itself. That's what we refer to as Smashable Brand, even the smallest little bit. And how that relates to website development, the Smashable Brand, obviously Coke got it right. There's lots of things we're talking about. How this relates to website development is, if you go to a website and there's a beautiful logo in the top corner, if it doesn't match, if you don't feel the emotion, if you don't feel this is a trustworthy website that I can come back to over and over again, you just won't. you can actually feel when you go to a website whether it's a legitimate or whether somebody just threw a logo on the top. And I could pull their logo off and put somebody else's logo on, and literally it would be a different store. I don't get the sense that they're going to be a reliable experience for me emotionally for the rest of my life. So what you want is you want to build that experience. You want to build that brand into everything that happens on the site and the entire experience of purchase, et cetera. That all happens. That's actually a big, so when it comes to just pure graphic design, you can pick a template off the internet and just use it and throw your logo on it. And that's cheap and cheerful and works great, but you will not create the emotional experience that you will want to create. If you really want to nail it, then what you do is you create an entire design, entire branded architecture, an entire thing. But the catch is obviously that drives the price up from free or $50 or, you know, tweaking a template for couple of $1,000 up to, you could spend tens of thousands of dollars in custom design and perfection in design. So that really depends where you are as a business. Are you just getting started? Are you at the very beginning? Then you throw a logo on a template and you keep going. But later on, you want to make sure you're custom designing everything to improve that emotional experience. So depending on the type of business that you're running on, we're talking about e-commerce today. There's all sorts of different platforms that then you take that design and you want to apply it to. So if you have questions about all the different platforms, Treefrog works with all the major platforms, even on a platform ourselves. There's platforms everywhere. We know all the big ones and work with them on a regular basis. So now the question is what's the right mechanism? What's the best thing to use for what you're doing? I want to say, to start off with all these platforms we're going to talk about over the next 5-10 minutes, that's not the only way to go online. We said this at the beginning. So we're talking about e-commerce specifically, platforms for e-commerce. But I'm going to quickly talk about a few other options as well. So in the B2C space, the major platforms that I would recommend, there are some other ones, like for example, Squarespace you might throw in right now. But if you are just at the very beginning of your voyage, you are going to sell one product, I would actually throw down on Wix. If you're only going to throw down one product really quick, Wix has a great platform. Literally in the next hour, you could have a website working. Like it is spectacular how quickly you can make it run. You have to have like very little skill. I'm going to talk about that later. And then as you grow your business, if you want multiple products, multiple things, actually Shopify starts to become a better answer. They have a lot more shipping options, a lot more things. Now, if I want to customize my brand, I want to get a lot more custom. I want to integrate. I want to have multiple geographic targets. I want to start selling to other countries. Then Shopify, not the right answer anymore. Now I'm sort of into using WordPress and the plugin for that, which is WooCommerce. And then if I want to get super crazy, I want to have multiple currencies. I want to have multiple like databases springing into the middle. Then none of those things are going to be into Magento. So as your business grows, you're going to use different platforms. Now, the irony is that Wix, you could get up and running for free by the end of the day. Magento literally is $30,000 a year for the platform. So depending on where you are as a business will depend on what the platform is that's relevant. So let me just give you a quick overview on these platforms because it's very relevant. And the reason I chose these platforms is because statistically they are the most used in the world. In fact, if you go do a search here, Shopify is growing like crazy. You'll see that Magento looks like it's sort of drooping a little bit, but in fact, it's still the best option at that level. Although Shopify has Shopify Plus, which is sort of similar. And then you've got WooCommerce, which is still sort of holding its own in the middle, and it's sort of like a little race here. Love it. And then you've got BigCommerce, which is an alternative to Shopify, except that it's not Canadian, it's based out of New Zealand, and it's sort of an alternative. What's interesting about Shopify, though, is that Shopify, if you think about Shopify, I sort of think about Shopify as I think about Walmart. So you could go sell your product in Walmart. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have suggested, to go get your product sold. Building a website would have cost you a lot of money, getting it all set up and working. Nowadays, you can get up on Shopify real fast, and Shopify takes a piece. Like that's the way it goes. So it's kind of in the way Airbnb is the largest hotel chain. Shopify is the largest retail store, in my opinion. It's just a different model for that. And in fact, Shopify became Canada's largest company. I think that was a couple of weeks ago. When was that? It was recent. Obviously, COVID didn't hurt them at all. Now, the interesting part between these platforms, some of them are platforms and some of them are software. That's kind of the way to look at it. We'll talk about what the difference is. So Shopify, and I'm not going to go through this because we only have another 20 minutes. I got all sorts of other cool things. If you want some help on picking platform, you're a little confused, reach out to Lindsay or Troy, or reach out to myself, ask a question, and we'll help you through which platform is the most relevant. What is, I'm going to say conceptually relevant though, is that there's two kinds of things. There's sort of platform, which means I'm going to go online, sign up, and use their thing. It's all on their system, all on their side. Or I actually go get the software, bring it to me, and run it myself. Now, WooCommerce and Magento, you can still run it on their end, but if you want to really super configure it, you can actually put it on your own servers, make it run yourself. That's not really the way platforms work. So if you want to just quickly get a product up and running, you're looking at basically Shopify, BigCommerce, or Wix. And the reality is these dedicated e-commerce platforms. So they've got all sorts of stuff. We're not going to go through them all. But there are some things that you should consider when you're thinking about this, which is how much money are they taking off the top of my product sale? How easy is it going to be to make Google work for me? How easy is it going to be to customize things? If I want specialty colors or specialty pricing or something like that, what are the complexities around that? When I start to grow, am I going to be stuck in this thing and can't grow past it, or am I not going to be? If you plan to grow to multiple products and multiple complexities, Wix may not be the answer at the very beginning for you. You might want to jump into something else. Let's go into these platforms just a little bit. I just want to do a cursory overview of each. So you've got Wix, so super low cost, really cheap, get up and running. You basically just pay hosting, and then you're up and running with all sorts of different things. The catch is not really great for Google. Everything you sort of add to it costs more. But it's so easy to use. I mean, you literally get online. I'm going to talk about in a second, my son building a Wix website last week. Shopify is a lot more complex to use than Wix, in my opinion. But same idea. You go in, you pick a theme, and you can. Then there's all these other apps that you can add to it, and you sort of improve. They have this entire ecosystem of things that you can do to improve your stuff. Now the catch is that the whole thing is built in Ruby on Rails. It's very limited in what you can do. If you want to externally access data sources and stuff, it's like pulling teeth. The recent version of Shopify just came out, which is now you can have 2 people edit. Up until recently, and in fact, I don't even think this thing is live yet, but you can only have 1 person edit the website at a time. So if you have 2 people editing, they're erasing each other's stuff. So that, again, just a basic limitation of the software. But again, they have beautiful, beautiful templates. So you can pick a nice template, slap your logo on it, and be selling stuff. Not by the end of the day. I would say Shopify would probably take you 24 hours to get it running. So you're probably a couple of days out from getting it to run. And there's a lot more customization and a lot more complexity to it, but it's a lot more powerful. You know, that's the difference. And they've also got a new thing, which is their Shopify app, the Shop app. So you can go and once you have your product online, there's a whole other group of people who are buying from that group as well. So this is the same sort of idea with BigCommerce. I also love it. The same thing, scalable thing. It's a good thing to work with. Again, I tend to lean toward Shopify. When they're growing faster, they've got a bigger ecosystem, and they're Canadian, so we kind of should. But if you really, for some reason, decide you don't want to use Shopify, BigCommerce is sort of your other option. I actually think the interface is a little easier to use than Shopify. Just my own personal thing. So the next step, so if you want multiple SKUs, you want to do some alternate customizations, and so Shopify isn't doing the things you want, now you're into WooCommerce. Just out of interest, Troy, you just wrote an article about this.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of quick thoughts about the difference in top 3 reasons why you'd pick WooCommerce or Shopify over the other?
Shopify is a kind of all-in-one e-commerce platform, as we were just talking about. You can get it up and running 24 hours, as you just said. There's hundreds of sites to choose from. WordPress, there's thousands of sites to choose from. And the biggest thing I think is the difference in why I love it as a marketeer with WordPress and the plugin for WooCommerce is built around content. So when it comes to great content, it has amazing management features, and there's a greater range of options in e-commerce in WordPress rather than Shopify. So it gives you more control. I always say, though, it doesn't take a cut. So everything you earn, you take. So that's kind of why I lean a little bit towards WooCommerce.
Wow, that's a great point. That is a great point. You know the number of times where you set up a Shopify website and then the customer goes, what? They take what percent? We told you that at the beginning, but you don't really, until you actually start selling your product, realize, you know, when you get to the end of the year and you realize Visa and everybody took 5, 6, 7% after you get all, and then you start the shipping costs and everything, and you realize, wow, my margins just got seriously affected. Suddenly, there's a huge mathematical advantage to going to WooCommerce. And so, and honestly, if you're, you know, the company we have that's selling 1.2 million that I was just talking about, they're on Shopify. So they're spending something like $100,000 extra. So, and a big, you know, that we could literally save them a month by simply moving them to WooCommerce. Now the question is it going to be, there's all sorts of other questions around that, but yes, that's a great comparison. And then, oddly enough, the next step is to go to Magento. And if you use the Magento Commerce Cloud, you're spending $30,000 a year, which is similar to Shopify Plus. But the reality is you get a lot more features. And I mean, the idea, I will note, with complexity, with great power comes great responsibility. With this extra complexity, every page, every product you add, you have to add it in every language, in every, you know, that you pick. So it becomes infinitely more complex to program, infinitely more complex to do stuff with. But this is how you get to multiple countries and multiple currencies, et cetera. So I'm just going to gloss over that because if you're just starting, that's not relevant. Now, some other things you need to consider that are really important is if you're hosting it yourself. So if you're on Shopify or Wix, it's all on their side. You never get to see the back end. You're stuck with them for life or until you pull everything out and move it somewhere else. But if you're hosting yourself with WordPress or Magento, you got to make sure you got a great hosting provider that sets you up securely, et cetera. And then you've got to make sure you're paying attention to Google Analytics. You've got to make sure you've got your digital marketing contended with. And that's something, you know, we're talking about next week, so we're not going to go into detail today. I did want to talk about a couple of key things, two big, giant things that everybody forgets. One is shipping. So if you're using Shopify, there's some great tools for automatically putting shipping in. But if you're using, you know, and as you grow, shipping gets really, really complex. And if you think shipping is complex, wait till you deal with taxes. So that's a really great thing if we're getting started, especially say with Shopify, who has all the taxes stuff sorted out. You just kind of sell stuff and you don't need to worry about it. You just put your fingers in your ears and they deal with the rest. Kind of like Amazon or something else like that. Now, one thing I'm super excited, it took me this long to get into this, is I'm super excited about the Just Add Water website idea. And here's why. So drop shipping is where you create a website, and you can do this on Wix, on any one of those platforms. And what happens is you set up and you actually take external people's products and sell them under your own brand. So I will use this example right now, which is watchus.shop. And the reason why I want to use this example in this presentation is that this is my son's website he built last week. He's 12 years old. Last weekend, he sort of showed up and said, yeah, I built this website and I'm selling smartwatches. And I was like, what? You're selling smartwatches online? Yes, this is my son who went to Wix, set up himself a website, and then connected it with, instead of putting his own products on, connected it with an external organization called Modelist, which goes basically, I think, to Alibaba. I actually don't know what the back end looks like, or Ali. I have no idea. I've yet to see any one of these ship. And you pick the products that you want on the website, and it automatically sets up the website for you. Like he literally did this in the afternoon. So he picked all the coolest watches that he thought would be cool. He designed the website. Then he was like, Dad, could you help me? And I went in and I tried to help him. And he's like, no, all your ideas are stupid. And he erased everything. And the website that you see there today is 100% built by my 12-year-old son in an afternoon. So, and he obviously doesn't have a product. He just went and used this drop shipping concept. So while he was eating pizza and working and printing things off on his 3D printers, which he built, he was building this website on the side and actually ordered, just before this presentation, ordered watches off his website. I have no idea whether they arrive or not, but I think it's fascinating. The fascinating part that I like about this is that if you don't know that you can't do it, you can do it. This is the thing. So he didn't know that he couldn't build a website. He just figured it's something that people do because, you know, that's what I do. So he just went and did it. And you guys are watching this webinar. I love this. So maybe we'll help you sort of remove the fear that you can do it. If my 12-year-old son can go build a website, you can do it too. I'm not sure if you heard the quote. If you think you can do it or you think you can't do it, you're right. So we've talked about that, so getting something set up and quickly. I also want to talk about point of sale platforms. So this is for a retail store. So if you've got a retail store now, this would be a good time to do this, is move to a point of sale system that's actually connected with the internet. And the idea here is instead of having, the ching at the, the one-arm banner at the front, one of the things you could do, it's watchus.shop, not watchus.com. That's important to make sure you get there. So this is a, feel free to buy a watch. You're making my son rich, and I don't have to buy him toys anymore. This is cool because instead of having your point of sale system and then a website you sell, what you do is your point of sale system basically is your website. So people who come into your store basically buy off your website in person. That's sort of the way I like to think of this. So this is what point of sale systems are. So there's two great ones, Lightspeed and Vend, that we've installed lots of times. There's another one, Shopify. I have to admit, we've never actually used Shopify point of sale. And in fact, Lightspeed is also located in Canada. But so I'm a huge fan of it. But basically, if you have a retail store right now and you want to start selling products online, instead of taking all your products and putting them all online, switch POS systems. Put all your inventory into that system, and now you're automatically have an entire website and stuff. And we can help you with that too if you need help. Now, the other thing, if you don't do that, is you can actually use a marketplace. So a marketplace would be something like selling on Alibaba or selling on eBay or selling on Etsy. And my favorite example of this is Etsy. So why Etsy marketplace as opposed to Wix? Why? The answer is because there are people who are artisans who are already on Etsy. They buy tons of stuff off Etsy. There's an entire group of people who loves buying stuff off of Etsy. So they have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who regularly shop this website, who are sort of already buyers. So if you want to find buyers, instead of creating a website and then doing digital marketing to get people, what you do is you set up on Etsy, and then Etsy will basically do some marketing for you. Now, that marketing they do for you will cost you money. So if you want to get started real fast, you've got a product that you just built this morning, some earrings or something like that, and especially one-off things, go sell them on Etsy. The catch is if you leave a set of earrings on Etsy for a year, that will cost you a couple of $100. So you'll probably lose all the money that you would have made if you had sold them. So that's when it suddenly makes sense. Maybe I'll throw that pair of earrings on my own store that I built in Wix, but now you have the problem. You've got to deal with all the shipping and all the other stuff surrounding it. So it makes sense. You might want to use a marketplace at some point. There's also the idea of social commerce. Now what social commerce is selling online, which is selling online through social media. So I like to just sort of show this quick example. We're running out of time, so I'm going to go real fast. Where you have pictures that you put up on Instagram and then you tag them, and you do the same thing on Facebook so that people can buy them right off the social media platform. So you don't even need to build a website, use Wix, use any of the platforms you talked about. You could literally just sell your stuff through Facebook. So the reality is this is coming, more and more people are doing it. Statistically, it's usually younger people. So this comes back to your digital marketing strategy. What are the groups of people that you're selling to? Lead with that. If everyone you're selling to is under 14, you should start selling on TikTok. Anyway, we'll keep going. Social commerce, Facebook, that's a general idea. This is the big thing. So selling online isn't just e-commerce. We talked about Shopify, Magento, e-commerce, et cetera, building yourself a website. If you need professional help, we'll help you with it. Social commerce is getting stuff and selling it through social media technologies. Again, we can help you with that if you need help. Retail POS, so selling through Vend or Lightspeed. Again, same idea, taking all the stuff you're selling in real life. If you had done this before COVID, wouldn't have been as big an issue for you to close down your store, because all the stuff that you're selling in your store, you just sell online. Marketplaces, pre-existing places where there are people. And then ERP integration. So if you're a large organization, getting your back-end systems connected with front end so that your stuff automatically happens. And then lastly, there are apps like Shop, like Wish, like Apple's, where you can actually go build an app that exclusively sells your product. So depending on where you are as a business, how you're growing, et cetera, that makes sense. Now I have a couple of minutes and I just want to go through one big idea here, which is how SEO works. Because if your last little nugget before you go, if you understand this sort of core concept, you're going to drive your sales no matter where you are and what you do. The fact is, if I go to Google and I type something in, there is a strong, connection between the belief that I think that the number one thing on Google is going to be the best product, or is I'm more likely to buy the number one listing on Google than anywhere else. So that means that your job at digital marketing becomes getting yourself number one on Google, not just getting found. And this is a big question, is how do I fight this? And the fact is, here's how it works. Any SEO engineer would kill me if they heard me tell it like this, but I'm just gonna tell it like this because this is how it is. Basically, SEO is a point system. So every time you do something on your website, you use the phrase that somebody's gonna type in, or relevant phrase, similar phrase. For example, website design. So website design, if I use that in the title, I get 3 points. If I use it in the first paragraph, I get 2 points. If I use it in the meta tags, I get some more points. If I have a link from an alternate page, I get a point. And all of the times that that phrase is used on my website, I get more and more and more points for it. And bottom line, whoever has the most points wins. Now, here's the Google algorithm is that basically they give you points for negative stuff, they take away points for bad stuff, and the SEO engineer's job is to try and figure out how all of these magical points fit together. Now the catch is, and even social media, et cetera, it all starts to fit together. Google's watching the whole world and trying to figure out what is the most, where should I send somebody? But here's the thing, this point system is constantly changing. And the reason it's constantly changing is that Google's job is to get people to the right answer. They're selling that trust, they're selling that idea. So if you have the website with the most and best information about a given subject, you'll be the thing that Google points at. So if you just simply set up a website and put your product on it and hope millions of people are gonna go to it, you're gonna fail. As much as I love my son, as brilliant as a kid he might be, the fact is his website is not gonna sell watches because Google doesn't genuinely believe that his store is the best watch store in the whole world to buy those smart watches from. So unless he directly sends stuff, here's the thing, if you want Google to do the work for you, you've got to have the best website with the most relevant information on the internet so that Google will rank you number one. Or you can spend billions of dollars, maybe not billions, hundreds of thousands of dollars doing SEO, which is mathematically trying to fight Google. But Google's business, they're trying to get the right answer there. So what they're doing is fighting your SEO people to try and lower your ranking to get somebody who has a better answer there. So the answer is be the best answer. If you are the best answer, you will get the sale. And the reality is, most people are always fighting over little stuff. They're fighting over the idea of like smart watch. They want to win that, but that's not actually people type in. People type in smart watch with time tracker and waterproof, and they type in all these other things. And that's the long tail. That's the stuff that people type in that's longer. And you're not going to get that in the listing in a product. You're not going to get that in the product description. So that means that you've got to have a strategy around how you're selling online, and that's going to come down to content marketing. So we should do a whole other webinar on content. And that is like, what kinds of content can I build? So you do why you do content, you have case studies on people that have bought stuff from you, you have expertise content. And that website I was telling you about, which they did 1.2 million, they're posting blogs with all the things that you should buy in order to make a thing, and then linking all those back to the website so you can buy them. You could have kindergarten content, like how does this thing work? How does that thing work if I need one of these? You could have opinion content, like I like this product, I hate this product. You can do external PR. You can do, I mean, the opportunities are endless. There's also reality though that some of that content is gonna, after a day, not be relevant anymore. And some of that content is evergreen. It's gonna last forever. So you've got to balance stuff that's going out today that's going to be thrown away in a few minutes and stuff that's going to stick around on your website forever, and use your energy accordingly. But the reality is there's an infinite number of things that you can do with content. There's seasonality, you can do calendaring. At the end of the day, there's tons of stuff you can do to develop that content and drive people in the right direction. So I've got 30 seconds left. I just want to throw down that if you are interested in some help along getting started with the online store, what platform to choose, how you're going to get out there, how you're going to figure out who your customer is so that you can use the right platform so you can set things up in the right way, then feel free to give us a call. You can also go to our website, and there's a free, I think Taylor's going to follow up with this, a free content calendar that you could use, or try our come to some of our future webinars and we'll talk more and more about different techniques and different things that you can use to get noticed online, to get your product out there and keep growing your company.